Hey everyone, welcome to 10 Movies, where every season we focus on one actor through 10 of their most iconic films. This season, we've decided to dive into the work of Mr. Harrison Ford, actor, icon, and arguably the most handsome man to wear a fedora. I'm Hemel Javeri, and with me is my co-host and friend, Brian Minter.
Hemel, how are you this evening?
I am great.
I am also great, not just because we are doing our podcast, but because we are talking about 1997's Air Force One, where Harrison Ford says, "Get off of my plane, I'm the president," and he throws a man to his death.
One of the most iconic action movie lines.
Like, you can't handle the truth.
Yeah, like it's
Get off of my plane.
Up there with, no bullets, and it's just so good. But yeah, we're here to talk about Air Force One. I guess I wouldn't call it a cinematic masterpiece, but what I would call it is an action movie masterpiece. A incredible set piece, completely absurd, completely watchable, one of the best action movies ever made. If you
really? You think so?
Absolutely.
So you think the preposterousness of the film somehow marries in close harmony with the masterfulness of the film?
There's no single element here that is not totally ridiculous. And I love all of it, right? Like you're going to make a movie about the president's plane being hijacked.
What if Die Hard was about the president?
Yeah, you better lean into it 110%.
Yeah, that's fair.
Good for Wolfgang Peterson to do that. So should we talk about the plot as much as it exists?
Let's get into it. What is the story of Air Force One? When primitive humans huddled around the campfire and told an version of this tale, what was at the heart of it?
The heart of this tale, the president who flies in a big fancy jet, it's getting hijacked by neo-communist terrorists. Like, they're not really Russian, but they
seem like they're like Russian separatists and
So his plane gets hijacked because the terrorists want to free a general who is out killing and murdering and raping people.
They feel that the glory of the brutal glory of the former Soviet Union has been tempered and their honor has been besmirched by the decadence of the West, and they are left with no choice but to hijack Air Force One.
So they hijack Air Force One
with the help of a treacherous Secret Service agent.
Yeah,
Johnny
Baldy. We'll talk about treacherous Secret Service agent guy about the end.
That guy's the worst.
But there's all the stuff that happens, and they think that the president has escaped in an escape pod, but no, he
would never. He's the president, and he's a martial arts expert, and he's a master pilot, and he's a man of integrity, and he speaks fluent Russian.
He would also never leave his family behind. His wife and daughter are on the plane, and then a lot of stuff happens to the point where there is even like Top Gun breaks out in the last quarter of the movie, where like MiGs are fighting U.S. Air Force jets or something.
Do you think there's ever been a real president who is not just better at hand-to-hand combat than any given Secret Service agent, but all of them combined?
I bet Obama.
The Secret Service they are overpowered by the terrorists.
Well,
but Harrison Ford takes them all out.
Well, a lot of them got shot.
Yeah,
early.
But then Harrison Ford shoots the guys who shot him.
There's a terrorist, and then they try to free the general, and he's almost free, and then the plane almost crashes, but then they get it back up in the air.
They save the president.
And then everybody does this weird ziplining thing.
They zipline from one plane to another. I gotta say, watching that was alarming. It's like, oh my God, they're jumping out of what they don't even know. They don't have parachutes, and they're ziplining from one plane to the other, and they're over the ocean, and it's crashing, and the special effects are dog shit, but it's still terrifying.
It's up there with Die Hard. It's up there with Speed. In terms of like escalating action, up and up and up and up. All the way to the very end. So it's just incredible. Mm-hmm. It's a great, great film.
Well, so I think you're right about, I think those are great comparisons, right? Yeah, like the constant ratchet of tension. Although Speed and Die Hard aren't preposterous in the way the Air Force One is.
I'm sorry. You think a bus going 50 miles or goes under with a bomb on it is not preposterous?
Once you accept that, it's pretty grounded, so to speak. But this, like in this movie, every time something insane happens, and then they're like, whoa, we barely got out of that one. And then a new, more insane thing happens every 5 minutes.
I think this entire film is grounded in realism.
He's making the fuel go out, and they're shooting the guy, and they're pretending to be the guy. guy. Oh, and there's a B plot that to give us a breather from the constant peril.
Where
every third scene you cut back to the White House where Glenn Close is the vice president, and every scene they go, "You've got to sign the paper making you the president," and she goes, "No, not yet. Harrison Ford is a fluent Russian-speaking combat medic, helicopter pilot, action hero, and he's going to save the day."
Well, listen, she's just doing what she should be doing, and she's absolutely right.
But I don't think she is. I mean, realistically, she should absolutely have, signed the paper and removed him from office temporarily because he was being held hostage by terrorists.
Yeah, I get that, but we're not dealing in realism here.
We certainly aren't.
We certainly aren't. But anyway, that is the plot of Air Force One.
He always does the right thing because he's the president.
I'm curious if you liked the film because I'm sensing derision here, and I don't like that. I'm sensing derision, and that doesn't sit well with me.
It's fun, right? It's very watchable. Unlike sort of, it's of the sort of that action movie of the, it's late 90s, but at least it had that, you kind of get a sense for like where people are and what's happening and what the stakes are. And, there's a scene where, he's got to cut the wires because, for some reason.
Yeah, and he sticks with the red, white, and blue.
Yeah, so there's 5 wires, orange, green, red, white, and blue. And he's on the phone with the Air Force guy. He's like, "All right, Mr. President, if you cut the wrong wire, the whole world will explode. Let me tell you exactly what wire to cut." And then the signal goes dead. And he's like, "Oh shit, I've got to guess. There's 4 choices. I'll pick the ones that aren't red, white, and blue." He's right. That was a terrible thing to do. The plane would have blown up. He had a 25% chance of getting it right, but he did it because of red, white, and blue.
Well, listen, I think we've established that the president.
They should have had an eagle fly in and point at the right one in that moment.
I think we've established that he does not make the best decisions.
He always makes the right decisions.
He always makes the right ones.
You really shouldn't, given what's happening. The red, white, and blue wires.
But you didn't answer my question. Did you like this movie?
I got distracted by the red, white, and blue wires. It was very, it was a fun, crazy romp of an action movie. But I like the sheer stupid. Also, okay, this is the last bit I'll say. The score. So at every time anything happens, dun, 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 like you can see like the Marine Corps band playing in the back. It's so stupid.
You hate
just like dun, 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 dun. Like the guy blows his nose and like everyone's saluting and the horns are playing. God, it's so relentless.
Hated this movie.
No, I did. But you liked the movie. It sounds like.
No, I love the movie. I don't know what like means here.
It's funny.
It's so funny.
It's fun. It's a fun movie.
No.
You won't accept that.
No, because I can see you right now, and I know you, and I know that the more you think about it, the more this movie is going to get under your skin, and you're actually going to hate the movie. I loved the movie.
There's a 25% chance of you getting it right, and if you fail, the plane will explode. Well, red, white, and blue. It's obvious as a nose on my face. Clip.
Listen.
Totally fine.
All right. Let me just say this. Look. Listen, I'm just going to say.
I'm sorry, I'm getting out of hand. Go
ahead.
I
really enjoyed this film. I love it for all of those things, but I actually think that it's a good movie. I think that it is like a time capsule movie of 1997 politics, like geopoliticalness, and weirdly apolitical for a movie that is about the president of the United States.
Yeah, there's like a very thin gloss of like, at the very beginning, Harrison Ford, because he is a perfect man, says like, "We will no longer negotiate with terrorists and America has not stood up for the right thing, but now we will." Also, I think he's a Republican, and can you imagine a Republican standing up for like, the international world order in this day and age?
But in any situation, the funny thing is that, to a degree, some of the politics here almost made me feel nostalgic, like considering the lens
but for
with
a time that never existed, right? Like
nostalgic for a time that never existed, but in a way that at least we could still pretend or have plausible deniability that it existed. Like that plausible deniability has just been wiped off the face of the earth.
Yeah, all the characters in the film and the movie itself have this extraordinary reverence for the office of the presidency, which is absolutely from a bygone era.
Right. I almost I described it as Sorkin-esque, right? The way that this film
if Aaron Sorkin and Michael Bay had a child, it would be Air Force One.
It would be Air Force One. It is Sorkin president-esque in how it feels about the president and the office and integrity and the role of like, you know, how the Constitution. Like, anyway, all that aside, great fucking movie. Don't talk shit about it. Let's talk about the cast.
Who's in the film? I mean, Harrison Ford plays Harrison Ford.
Yeah.
And Gary Oldman plays the lead terrorist.
Yeah.
There's a lot of, I think, like, character actors doing, like, really obvious but effective things. But those are really the kind of the big two characters, right? Harrison Ford and Gary Oldman?
Harrison Ford, Gary Oldman. We have Glenn Close.
Oh, the vice president.
As the vice president.
But her only job is just to bite her nails and not make a decision.
No, I mean, she was wonderful. Her only job is to like lean over a conference table and talk into a speakerphone. That's all she does the entire movie. She projects very loudly.
Yeah, also every third scene, she reminds us of a different amazing trait the president possesses. Don't forget, this president is a hand-to-hand combat expert. Don't forget, this president can breathe underwater.
No, he also flew rescue missions in Vietnam,
he flew rescue missions in Vietnam. He's a decorated war hero. He speaks fluent Russian.
You hate this movie.
I don't hate. I said it's a fun movie. It's silly.
You're forgetting William H. Macy, who is also in this movie.
Could you be more decent? William H. Macy I think he's like the backup pilot of the plane. He
plays Major Norman Caldwell, USAF military aide to the president.
Yeah, he keeps everybody calm in the hostage situation. And at the end, when the plane's going down and there's trouble, and Harrison Ford's like, "No, my family goes first. We all go together." And he says, "No, Mr. President, it's time to get you off of this plane."
And there's like no parachutes left. And
he insists that the president go.
He's just willing to die
the soul
for
of
the
duty.
office. I do like this movie, and I will say that
you love this movie.
I love this movie. I have seen it a lot. It's my mom's favorite movie. We're very nostalgic about this film.
Wow. This was your mother's favorite movie, Air Force One.
Yeah, my elderly Indian mother loved Harrison Ford.
God bless her.
Loved Air Force One. She was just like, incredibly tense.
When we decided to do Harrison Ford on the season of the podcast, you were like, yeah, whatever, I don't care. Harrison, Han Solo guy, I don't care. But yet I keep learning that you have all this like deep love and reverence for all these Harrison Ford movies.
It's so weird because my Harrison Ford obsession doesn't start until late 80s, early 90s.
Yeah, it's Working Girl and apparently Air Force One. Those are your touchstones.
Yeah, it has nothing to do with...
You don't care about Han Solo.
And Indiana Jones. I actually find Indiana Jones kind of like not good.
All right. Okay, this is getting out of hand, right?
All right.
I get that you're leaning into your love of Air Force One, and that's fine, but there's no reason to be ridiculous.
All right, look, let's talk about I want to talk about Gary Oldman here because I think that I can predict what you might have to say about Gary Oldman.
Okay, let's hear it. What do you think I'm going to say?
I don't know what you're going to say, but I will say that I thought he was wonderful as the villain, Igor. Ruthless terrorist. He walks that fine line between menacing and but not so crazy that he becomes like comedic.
Yeah, I think he's actually playing like a better and more subtle villain than the movie needs, right? You could play a complete scenery chewing monster here. But yeah, like he's awful and he's ruthless, but like he's very believable, and like the movie, they make some effort to like give him a reason for doing what he's doing, and he's sort of at pains to, like he's behaving really terribly particularly towards the president's wife and daughter, but he talks about his own children, and he's a real villain, but he's got a lot of, he's got menace, and he's got a lot of kind of meat on his bones.
Yeah.
I loved him.
Like, I think he's great. He really is a great foil for Harrison Ford in this.
Yeah, and then sometimes he's frustrated, and he's a very real villain.
They don't even have that many scenes together.
No, though.
It's really
they have
get
one
off
confrontation
my plane.
And then they fight and they throw them out of the. But the special effects. Okay, this movie it's 97, right? It's 97. Not that old, and some of the special effects are just like they look like video game cutscenes. Like at the end, the plane crashes in the ocean, and it looked terrible, right? It looked like someone like waving a paper cutout in front of the camera. Just awful.
I do think that
where was your budget, Wolfgang?
They wasted all their budget on probably Harrison Ford's salary.
Worth every penny, though. Speaking of Harrison Ford,
want to talk about Harrison Ford?
Yeah, let's talk about Harrison Ford. That's why people are here.
He hits every single tick for Harrison Fordness in this movie. The quintessential Harrison Ford film, if you ask me, and quintessential Harrison Ford character.
Well, hold on now. So but like blown out to a ridiculous degree, right? It like takes all the things Harrison Ford is known for and it cranks them up to 11 and it hits the knob with a hammer. This is not the quintessential. You don't even know the character's name, I bet.
His character's name is President James Marshall. Thank you very much.
All right, fine.
And Harrison Ford only plays characters named Jack, by the way, after a certain point. I think in Witness, he was a Jack. He is a Jack in Air
I'm
Force
interested in the
One.
role, but could you change the character's name to Jack?
He is a Jack trainer in Working Girl. He just plays a Jack.
Maybe he doesn't like to learn a new character name on set. Maybe that's just easier for him.
No, I feel like, so, I don't know. This is a very 90s Harrison Ford. Like, this is quintessential. He's one step removed from Jack Ryan in this film.
Yeah, it's a big action thriller movie.
All right, let me run through my hit list of Harrison Fordness. If you,
How do we evaluate the Harrison Fordness of these films?
let's see. One, is he befuddled in this film?
See, here I think this is not quintessential because he's never befuddled, right?
He is befuddled.
When is he befuddled? President James Marshall? The man has never been befuddled a day in his life.
Oh my God, I think that he is. That's so funny that we're looking at this in totally two different ways.
I mean, I guess he's like whipping his head around a lot, like a lot of like, oh, now what's going on?
Wait, because you brought this up, I need to quote this from the Letterboxd review of Air Force One, where a one, Paul McNeil, gave it 3 stars and says, "Nobody does bewildered that events have not killed him face like Harrison Ford," which is really publicly on display here. No, okay, so in the movie, he kind of escapes and the terrorists don't realize that he's alive, so he's doing a lot of like sneaking around.
Yeah, sneaking around the plane.
But there's all this like, I don't know what to do. So he is befuddled, and then he has to learn how to use like a fax machine or a telephone or something like that. It's a really good comedic moment.
Yeah, there's a good joke about a fax machine. Of course, like people don't know what fax machines are anymore, but all right, I'll give you that there's some befuddlement. But it never lasts.
It never
because of his mastery.
No, but they also don't, I don't know, I guess you don't think this way, but the reason I liked this so much is that even though he is like kicking ass and kicking terrorists and flying planes and stuff like that, he doesn't do it in like the way we have modern action heroes do it now.
Yeah, if The Rock remade this movie, there would never be even a blink. He would just like constantly be like killing people and flying the plane, and like he would do all the same things as President James Marshall, but it wouldn't feel like, even though this character's ridiculous, it does feel like a real guy doing it.
Yeah. Like there's no, he kills each of the terrorists, but he kills them like one-on-one, not like 8 at a time. What about, is he an anti-hero or a Boy Scout here?
He's the most Boy Scout of all Harrison Ford roles. Like you couldn't get more Boy Scoutier. There's no overhead to go to.
I thought this was kind of lacking here, the charm factor.
Well, President James Marshall is not charming because he has no time to be charming.
Do you just no hint of a charm factor even?
I mean, I think perhaps if the movie had like a backstory or a context to it, you would assume that the president has had to make his way in the world using charm, given his lofty political office. But we don't see it on screen.
He's a political operative. I think there are some cute moments that humanize him with his family and his daughter, and he has this like lovely throwaway interaction with a secretary who like tells him about a secret fax line that hasn't been disconnected. Mr. President,
there's a secret fax line, and for some reason you're going to personally operate it, even though there's 30 other people on the plane not doing anything.
It's just like I think that works.
He's also the IT specialist of the plane.
Is he kind of a dick?
Do you think does he even need a cabinet? Do you feel like he could just do all their jobs better than them?
Well, he made all that foreign policy on his own. He didn't consult his national security advisor or his secretary of defense.
The movie opens with him making a new foreign policy up on the spot, and it's the right thing to do.
In front of the Russians. It didn't consult with anybody.
In Russian, because he does it in Russian.
All right, let me get back to my question. Is he kind of a dick? He kills a bunch of terrorists, so I'm going to say maybe.
You're stretching there. President James Marshall is not dickish in any way. He's too decent. He has too much integrity. If he saw dickish behavior, he would stop and call it out.
Moms love him and dads want to be him.
Yeah, I feel like that fits here, right? Like, what dad doesn't want to be an ass-kicking president?
Yeah. What lady doesn't want to be married to an ass-kicking president?
Yeah, that lady in the movie did. She enjoyed it. She liked being married to him.
Again, I feel like you've mentioned this earlier, but Harrison Ford never actually breaks out of the Harrison Fordness of his career.
Yeah, he's got a lane, and I think it's not the narrowest of lanes, but yeah, he does. It's hard to think of any Harrison Ford roles that are like total curveballs for him.
Yeah, this could be Jack Ryan. This could be whatever, any other action movie that he's done.
Yeah, I feel like this is just like the end of Jack Ryan's career, you know? Like he's that like super good Boy Scout badass guy.
Do you think this movie, I feel like this movie, it's not so much that it has a lot to say intentionally about politics or society, but I think it unintentionally says a lot of things.
Yeah, it is studiously apolitical, as you said earlier. But yeah, I think, and you alluded to this earlier, that like the reverence for institutions is so on display here, right? Like the presidency and the military and the plane. They like this movie is so into the plane, right? Like the mystique of the plane and the majesty of the plane.
Where the press secretary Melanie Mitchell is like, let me give you a tour.
Oh yeah, you actually get like
plane.
the tourist guide to the plane. Like, did you know that Air Force One has its own postal office? Or there's all these little details they give you. And like that's fine, right? Because the movie is called Air Force One and it all takes place on this plane. So I think some like goofy reverence for this particular aircraft is warranted. But it's really like this movie loves the stuff that it's about.
Right. It loves the institution of the president. I really love the fact that there is this tussle over who is in charge, right? Like who is in command, which is, I mean, I'm sorry, but that is like lifted straight from an Aaron Sorkin storyline of the president might be emotionally incapacitated.
Yeah, the Secretary of Defense is arguing that he's, I think that's actually a reference to something that actually happened when Alexander Haig was the Secretary of Defense under Nixon, that there was actually a moment when...
Nerd alert.
There was actually a moment when he said in the Situation Room that he was in charge, despite the fact that, there was a vice president who ranked him in the constitutional order.
Anyway, okay, thank you for that.
This may or may not be a reference to that incident.
Thank you very much for that nerd break. But... totally lost. Oh, they call
I'm sorry to bore you with American history, Hemel. Let's get back to the president kung fu fighting villains in the air.
That's what we're here for. Look, they call in a constitutional expert, right? They're like, call in the guy who knows the Constitution, right? Like,
and I think it's the book cop from Simon. It's like, well, I know a lot about the Constitution. See, this is a real problem. See.
But there's so much reverence for like the military and the presidency and our institutions. And I felt watching it, I just felt so oddly nostalgic for any time that might have existed. Like all of that right now is so completely blown out of the water that it doesn't even exist in my opinion.
And again, like it never existed. There was never a president like this or a president for whom we had this reverence. But yeah, I think you're right that there was a fiction we all agreed to maybe before our time.
There was a myth that you could maybe potentially buy into.
Yeah, this is like a pre-Watergate vision of the presidency as like the national dad.
It's completely gone. And I was just like, wow, I would love to go back to simpler times where we could actually pretend that this may exist even for a couple of hours. And then watching it now, you're like, no, you would never make a movie now about a good president.
And all those scenes, and they're not super exciting because those scenes like, meanwhile, back at the White House, I do think, again, I think the movie is well made.
Yeah.
I think those scenes are necessary, right? Like both to give you a breather and to sort of constantly remind you of like, the context in which it's like there's a lot of scenes where they're quick, but like we see like the nation is huddled around its television set waiting for news, and like all the cameramen cheer when they like the president escapes and gets there's a candlelight vigil. So yeah, I think that stuff is actually I think that's necessary in terms of the storytelling to like create the scope of it, right? This is not just a hijacking movie, it's a president fights the terrorists hijacking movie.
Yeah, in a way that you could still be hopeful about democracy and even like have an iota of respect for institutions.
But it's telling that in order to make us feel this reverence for the institutions, the movie dials their goodness up to ridiculous levels.
And threatens their very existence.
Yes, because the terrorists are going to blow up the
terrorists are going to blow it all up. And they're, who is in charge? And we must follow constitutional order. Like that is the thing that is crazy here.
Now, so we didn't talk about this, and it doesn't really matter. But like the reason the terrorists were able to take over Air Force One is that there was a treacherous Secret Service agent who Harrison Ford like blows up at the end of the movie. I actually missed why he betrayed the presidency.
There's no reason. He's just a bad guy. I
almost respect that choice.
I respect that too. Who gives a shit? Who cares? He's bad.
Some bad shit went down and he did that.
Who cares? He's bad. Maybe he voted for the other guy.
They never really say. I just assumed that like they happened and I missed it.
No, they never really say. It's just that he
was an asshole.
He comes in there and he shoots like 4 Secret Service agents, and then
at the end he shoots William H. Macy point blank.
Yeah.
And William H. Macy was going to go down with the ship anyway, but he robbed him of that heroic death.
Yeah, he just like shoots him like like a couple of times. And yes, but the William H. Macy character is this like great noble character, and he plays him so well. You usually love all this bullshit.
What are you talking about?
You are the biggest Aaron Sorkin institution guy
absolutely not
in the world.
How dare you? I'm not an institution guy.
You are. You
facile, hollow patriotism? No, thank you, ma'am.
You are a Sorkin apologist like I've never met before.
Well, I am a Sorkin apologist because I think the man writes a mean script. It's not that I share his love for American institutions.
But you embrace that ideology when it comes from Aaron Sorkin. But when
I will throw a chair through a Starbucks window right now. We will pause this camera and go out down to the street.
But when it's Wolfgang Peterson, it's not good enough for you.
No, it's just so silly. You know, it's all the there's just constantly a flag flapping in the wind no matter what's happening.
Yeah, it's true. And I think that's probably why people really like this movie.
Well, is there any more we can say about Air Force One? This beloved classic.
I have a couple of things, actually.
Oh, you have some more things?
Unfortunately for you, because you sound like you're ready to get out.
I'm trying to get out of here before tempers rise. We've both said some things I think we regret saying. Let's just leave it at that.
Look, I want you to know that Kevin Costner was offered the role and didn't take it.
Oh, you could totally see Kevin Costner. See, Kevin Costner would have made it worse because,
he's such a goody-goody.
Yeah, the starchy, bullshit brass bandness of it would have been just that much more so with Kevin Costner in it.
Who was the movie MVP?
Who did you most enjoy other than Harrison Ford in the film?
I have 2. But I guess I don't know which one.
I'll go first and say Gary Oldman. He's so good. He's such a bad villain.
He's so good. He's got the accent, and I particularly like the scene where the shortcut to making a villain bad is having them mistreat a woman, right? Either they're gonna rape her or they're gonna hit her or whatever. But he has he's talking to the president's daughter or something like that, and he's being really weird and creepy, but almost paternal.
Yeah, he kind of kisses her on her forehead, and he's being it doesn't read as sexual at all.
No.
It reads as protective in a fatherly way.
Yeah.
But he's threatening to do her harm in order to motivate her father. So I agree. That's a very villainous bit.
It's a really villainous bit. But
and in the hands of a lesser actor, that would have been, because the movie's preposterous and ridiculous, but that stuff would have landed really weird in the hands of a lesser actor.
Yeah. And it would have made the movie a lot less believable. A lot of the tension is in the fact...
It's so believable. That's what I enjoyed about it. It was just a really grounded, realistic human story.
Listen, when your family gets held hostage, you are gonna...
I don't know which wire to cut. Oh, wait a minute. I do, because these are red, white, and blue.
You
never cut a red, white, and blue wire.
You're gonna wish that James Marshall was there.
I am gonna wish, but he's not real. He never has been. So who did you... so if you can't pick Gary Oldman, who did you most enjoy in the film?
Okay, I'm gonna say I have to have 2 in this one.
You can't have 2.
I have to have
pick
2.
One. Well, tell me the one you wouldn't pick, and then tell me the one you would pick.
Well, okay. What do you mean? Okay, the one...
You've got to at least rank them.
Okay, I'll rank them I feel like we've already talked about William H. Macy.
Mm-hmm. We enjoyed him.
I will actually pick
who's left?
The administrative assistant. She's this...
the fax lady.
The fax lady. She plays this very,
the only black person in James Marshall's America.
The only black person. She's a secretary administrative assistant. Important enough that she gets to fly with the president. And she's like, here, sign this. It's not important, And they're in the middle of this terrorist thing. And she's like,
Mr. President, the fax machine.
No, I'll tell you why this actually almost made me tear up a little bit is, again, in context with everything that's happened, is because she plays this dedicated civil servant, right? Who is just trying to serve democracy. And she's like, wait, I know of this fax thing that might actually help you. And he's like, you get to be postmaster general.
Yeah, that's a funny bit.
It's a great little bit, but then it also kind of spiraled into me thinking about all the civil servants who are just trying to do good things and help people in America. like, voter registration and things like that, that is like completely being destroyed.
Yeah, she is an avatar of those forgotten heroes.
She's just like a civil servant who's like trying to do her job and trying to like serve democracy in her own like tiny little way. And that I feel like the movie celebrates that a little bit.
So I agree that is a nice little character, but then the movie, because it can't take even a pause for a second, at one point all of the passengers, they get all the hostages off, they're all parachuting. Now,
like,
none of these people have ever been on a parachute in their life. They should be pissing themselves with terror, and it cuts to like a shot of her like, she's parachuting through the darkness over the ocean with
she
an
doesn't
airplane.
know where she's gonna land.
She's like, hurrah! I love it. This is great. I helped the president send a fax, and now I'm parachuting.
It's like, when you go to like an amusement park and they green screen you in front of whatever.
Yeah, that's what it looks like.
That's what it looks like.
Terrible little shot of that. So pointless too.
Lastly, where does this fit into the canon of Harrison Ford films?
Well, not on the Indiana Jones Han Solo tier.
Yeah.
But I think this is I think people like this movie. I think you have lowbrow tastes, but many Americans do as well. I think a lot of people, this is a good old-fashioned eat your pork chops and watch some TBS fun movie to watch.
I feel like you just insulted like a ton
I
of
like
Americans.
the movie too. I'm not knocking the Well, I am knocking the movie.
I want to take a poll. Anybody who listens to this podcast, please let me know if Brian actually liked the movie, because it sounds like he did not like the movie.
Listen, sophisticated, classy listeners, the few of you who are there, I want you to meet me over at the other poll, and we'll talk about our very French impressionistic films.
I agree with you. I think that this is part of the late 90s resurgence of Harrison Ford.
But I don't think Harrison Ford never had a resurgence, because he never left. He's always been Harrison Ford.
He had a little dip. Let's say he had a little dip, right?
Well, he took on some more serious roles, and maybe this was his return to genre filmmaking, perhaps.
Well, it coincides with him becoming an older guy action hero, which is really popular. Like, he's got Jack Ryan films, he's got Air Force One.
True.
This is his middle-age action hero
I
vibe.
do like, though, that he didn't do that, like, the Liam Neeson, Denzel Washington. Everyone makes sort of this old guy rescuing their daughter kind of movie. But I feel like this is not him doing that late in his life when it's kind of pathetic. Like, he was still young enough to be an action hero.
Yeah, but that genre of filmmaking doesn't exist until Liam Neeson does Taken.
So you don't think it was inspired by Air Force One?
So
he didn't have the opportunity to participate in that. Michael Caine did one of those. Yeah. There's so many of them.
Old guys kicking ass.
Yeah, but I think that I feel like that's a lot about your own sense of masculinity as an actor who used to be a badass and is not. You want to make those movies.
Yeah, and I don't even think he's that old in this film. He's probably like mid-40s or something.
Yeah, he's a. Back then, we had presidents who were middle-aged rather than now, when all our presidents are 80,
like
87 years old.
I think that's it for this podcast and Brian's hatred of Air Force One, which I'm never going to let him forget.
I enjoyed Air Force One, and we'll watch it again in 5 years and remember how silly it was.
You didn't think about it as deeply as I did.
I just think you're giving it a real pass on preposterousness for some reason.
I am a true American, Brian. I appreciated this film.
Let the rivers run.
All right, what is our outro? You can join us next week.
That's very simple. You keep getting it wrong. We will see you next week, is what we say.
See you next week.
We will see you next week.